So let's start with our opening lines. Let's take a look. Aaron, what you got?
All right, we got a Giannis injury update. The Milwaukee Bucks are preparing to be without the two-time MVP for the start of their Eastern Conference first-round series against the Pacers. Their hopeful treatment on his left calf strain will allow him to return sometime later in the series, but he's been undergoing around-the-clock treatment to his calf. Now, of course, this injury update on the Greek Freak has shifted the Pacers-Bucks series odds. So the Bucks opened -150. They're now down to -130. The Bucks are 4-5 without Giannis this season, and we also know the Pacers have owned the Bucks, winning 4 of 5 this season outright.
It's like, was this a surprise? We knew he could be out. Look at that price move. All right.
And the Mavericks were maybe the hottest team in the NBA down the stretch, winning and covering 16 of their last 20 games. And surprisingly, it was the defense that carried them. The best defensive rating in the NBA over that last 20-game stretch. That's a quarter of the season. No small sample size there. Back with Joe and Aaron. This series already set. They will play at least 4 games, if not 7. I'd love to see it. Aaron, I want to start with you. Who do you like in this series?
I like the Clippers here. Now, I do think this goes 7 games, so that's going to be interesting come that 7th game, potentially, if I want to swing the other way. But nonetheless, I do think the Clippers are ultimately going to end up winning this. I know Luka Donic has been great, as well as Kyrie Irving, and since the trade deadline, they've looked a lot better. But at the same time, I do think the Clippers can step up in this spot because they have the 3rd best offensive efficiency this season in the 4th quarter. So that's important when talking about the postseason. Also, the Clippers have won 2 of 3 against Dallas this season. And don't forget, the Clippers, they shot terrible in those games. So we see some positive shooting regression as well. And for Dallas, the issue here is going to be, I think the Clippers defense can slow them down. And when we look at Dallas, yes, they're really great when they have over 120 points scored. They're 31-1. But when they're out under 120 points, they're currently 19-31. So I think defense is important here. We know the Clippers are good in the 4th quarter. That's going to matter in really close games.
Nice, deep statistical dive. I like that.
Thanks to our researcher, Kevin Pulsifer, yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's for Pulse. That's not for you. Then.
Are you in agreement there?
I am in agreement. I am in agreement.
Okay.
Unlike her constantly going against me because of, I don't know.
Well, no, they set it up for you to follow me to make me look smart this time.
I think it sounded very nice. I would add 2 things to the equation for why I like the Clippers. Number 1, we showed the graphic about the 16-4 over the last 20. Ooh, that was very impressive. Why don't we take a look at who they actually played during that stretch? 2 of those wins were against Utah. They stink. 2 of the wins against Houston. They didn't make the playoffs. 2 wins against the Heat. They're a play-in team. 2 wins against the Kings. They're a play-in team. 1 win against Detroit. 1 win against Charlotte. 1 win against Chicago. 1 win against San Antonio. 1 win against Atlanta. Nothing on there is impressive. Now, you'll notice it only adds up to 13 because they did have 3 good wins on there, and I'm leaving that out of the equation. But that's number 1. That they beat up on some bad teams. Number 2, this is just a hunch. I think the Clippers have been sandbagging on Kawhi's injury. That's just a hunch. In this era of not being allowed to load manage, my thought is that they realize they weren't going to grab a 1 seed. There was no reason to chase it. He's dinged up. We're going to let him rest. We're going to get ready for the playoffs. We're opening a new arena next year. We want to make a statement this year. If our team is healthy, we have a chance of winning in the postseason. I am of the hunch opinion that he's going to be ready to go. I could be dead wrong.
Yeah. I'm on the other side of you guys. I think Luka Donic is maybe, outside of Nikola Jokic, the best basketball player on the planet right now. And he proved that down the stretch there, made the MVP race at least interesting.
Yeah.
I think Jokic is going to win it. But, Joe, you mentioned they beat all those bad teams, but they also covered. So it's not like they were beating and not – they were exceeding expectation in 16 out of those 20 games. And the defense is very surprising. I'll come right back at you, Aaron. You answer first, and then, Joe, you can follow. The fear factor of Luka Doncic, 1 to 10, as a Clippers backer. Where are you? 1 being not scared at all, 10 being he's frightening.
You should be scared of Luka. I mean, you see him game after game after game. He doesn't have these shooting slumps or games where, he's off for 5 games. Like, this guy's always on, and always it feels like it's hot. So it's going to be interesting betting his player props. But should you fear Luka Doncic? Yeah, I think anybody facing him would. But the team as a whole, no one's fearing them as a whole, in my opinion.
8.5. He's one of those guys that can take a franchise to another level. He is that good.
Kawhi Leonard, though, if healthy, supposed to be a guy who can shut down people like Luka Doncic. I think it's going to be a great fun series and does go 7 games like you mentioned. Other Western series we know is set, the 3-6 matchup. Suns and T-Wolves. T-Wolves have been jockeying for the first seed in the West all season long, but they settle for a 3-6 matchup with the Phoenix Suns. Aaron, who you taking?
Well, it's interesting to see the Suns, despite being the lower seed, actually be favored in this series and a move to -110 both ways. But I'm leaning towards Minnesota here, and I don't feel confident in the way that I'm talking about this, but I do think that Minnesota has the advantage. First, defensively. We know this is kind of strength on strength, so they led the league all season in defense. And then Phoenix, when they have their big three on the court together, everything's great. They're second in offensive rating, but when that big three is not on the court together, things can kind of go sideways. Another reason I'm leaning towards Minnesota is clutch time. Minnesota is great in win percentage in clutch time, and if we look at the Suns as a whole in the fourth quarter, they rank dead last, net rating dead last in offensive rating. So those are things that matter in the postseason. Typically with the regular season, we just throw it out the window. But at the same time, certain situations, if you're not good to finish games, that's going to matter. And if your big three has to be on the court and all playing well, that matters.
I haven't done anything with the side, or the series side, that is. There's compelling cases on both sides. I like Minnesota's defense. That's big in this time of year, but the matchup has been a problem. But I got to give you something, right? I'm going to fade Bradley Beal in game one. Okay. Once you start to see those props, take a look at what he did against Minnesota in the last game of the season. He's 14 of 21 from the field. He was 6 of 6 from deep. He had 36 points. It was the best long-range shooting night of the season for him by a mile. Minnesota's going to adjust. You also have Kevin Durant. You also have Devin Booker. Unders tend to hit more when we see the early stage of the playoffs as these teams figure each other out. Bradley Beal, it's going to be a fade for me in game one.
I'm going to lean into this credo I've generally noticed in postseason basketball, especially when two teams play slow. Good half-court offense beats good half-court defense. And when healthy and having all three out there, the Suns' half-court offense is elite with Booker, Beal, and KD. So I side with the Phoenix side. They are the favorite despite being the 6th seed, as we pointed out. All right, let's take a look at the odds to win the Eastern Conference as we shift over. It's no surprise the Celtics, a heavy -195 favorite to win the East. They are the biggest favorite to win any conference entering the postseason since the 2019 Warriors were in the midst of their dynasty. The Bucks and 76ers are next at +750 and +850. The Boston Celtics an overwhelming favorite. Should we be betting on them or should we be looking for value elsewhere?
Yeah, listen, -195, it's a lot, but let's not overthink this. I mean, Boston, hands down, best team in the NBA, East, West, right? Finished with the best record, even by 7 more wins than any other team in the NBA. They've got the best roster. They're very deep. Best offense, second best defense, best home record at 37-4. The fact that it's going to have to go through Beantown, that should scare you. And they've got a lot of experience on that roster who's been there, done that, and have experienced this. Unfortunately, they've lost in the past. Hopefully, they've learned from their past mistakes. I think let's not overthink it. Boston's going to represent the East.
All right, and I think most people would agree with you, but let's have a little fun, shall we? If there is one team that could upset the apple cart, maybe knock Boston out in the Eastern Conference, what team would that be?
Yeah, folks are going to be thinking I'm drinking that blue and orange Kool-Aid over here in New York City, but how could it not be the Knicks, right? I mean, this is a team, we always like to look at teams who finish strong and finish hot. The Knicks did. They won 5 straight. Brunson has been unbelievable. If you're not discussing him and the MVP, shame on you. Not saying that he deserves to win it, but I think he deserves to be in the conversation. Averaged 38 points his last 10 games. DiVincenzo, Josh Hart has stepped up without Julius Randle. They've got one of the best defenses in the NBA with Hartenstein as well as Mitch Robinson defending the rim. And we've seen them dominate the teams in the East. They can beat the Bucks. They can beat the Cavs. They can beat the Heat. They can beat the 76ers. And now that they've gotten that 2nd seed, I've seen crazier things happen, Tyler. I do believe Boston represents the East, but if there's a team that I think could pull the upset, I love the Knicks. And they're not getting a lot of respect in regards to the odds makers out there.